So I wrote this letter to the Biden administration, in which I said, look, like all of us saw children shot in the head on a regular basis. We all saw malnutrition, et cetera, et cetera. I thought this would be a big deal. It's not very common that 45 American doctors and nurses write to the President of the United States saying that they've witnessed atrocities carried out with American weapons by an American ally.
All right, I want to get into this piece that you contributed to the New York Times back in October of last year. 65 doctors, nurses, and paramedics. What we saw in Gaza. So, as I understand, you kind of did this in partnership with the New York Times,
Mhm.
where you found 65 peers who had all witnessed similar developments, both physical and psychological, amongst the patients that you all saw. So these are the images of bullets in skulls. And the findings here, just a few of them: 44 doctors of these 65, 44 doctors, nurses, and paramedics saw multiple cases of preteen children who have been shot in the head or chest in Gaza. 63 nurses, doctors, and paramedics, so almost all of them, observed severe malnutrition in patients, Palestinian medical workers, and the general population. 53 doctors, nurses, and paramedics saw many children suffering from easily preventable infections, some of whom died from them. So I want to get a little more into the findings of this report, but I do also want to ask how you put this together, because you write a little bit about that in the introduction. Did it just so happen that through communicating with peers and colleagues who had been to Gaza that, hey, you're starting to notice certain very disturbing patterns amongst the patients that you see?
Yeah, so I when I got back, I got invited to come talk to a small group. I think it might have been Doctors Against Genocide, one of these groups, in Dearborn, in Michigan. And so I went when I got back from Gaza the first time. They just wanted to know what I'd seen there. So I went to the meeting, and on the panel, I literally had to fly into Dearborn and fly out immediately to get back to work. But on the panel, I sat next to Thayer Ahmad, who's an emergency room doctor from Chicago, of Palestinian descent, and we were just casually talking before the panel actually started. And I remember saying, "Yeah, I couldn't believe how many kids I saw shot in the head." And he said, and I had assumed that this was just the work of there was some deranged sniper or drone team or individual soldier or whatever, that happened to be near where me and my team were working at European Hospital. Um, and So I just assumed it was an isolated thing because it was so constant. I mean, I recorded in my diary that I saw a kid shot in the head on average every day that I was in Gaza. I'm sure I saw more because I only recorded about half of what I saw. But the um and so, but he responded by just saying, "Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, every day I saw a kid shot in the head, at least one." And I said, "Wow, what the hell?" I mean, because he was at Nasser Hospital on the other side of the city at a different time than I was, you know. So this prompted me to write a letter. I got together 45. Well, at first, so I wrote a letter to the Biden administration, basically from American healthcare workers, and at that point, I knew probably 3 or 4 dozen of them, and just from personal context, because it's not thousands of people that have gone over there to do this; it's a few dozen, right? So we all get each other's phone numbers and create these giant WhatsApp groups and whatever. So I wrote this letter to the Biden administration, in which I said, look, like all of us saw children shot in the head on a regular basis. We all saw malnutrition, et cetera, et cetera. I thought this would be a big deal. It's not very common that 45 American doctors and nurses write to the President of the United States saying that they've witnessed atrocities carried out with American weapons by an American ally. Like if that's happened before, I don't know about it. And I mean, I follow these kinds of things closely.
Yeah, it's
Um,
astounding. Yeah, go ahead, Key. I just
yeah,
want to put the
it's
graphic back
pretty
up. Yeah,
unusual, right?
yeah.
But not a single nobody other than Democracy Now. Nobody had this, and plenty of European media and Israeli media actually. Plenty of them were interested. Not a single mainstream American source, except, and I have to give them credit for this, except for the visual opinion team at the New York Times. They reached out to me and they said, "We want to know who actually saw what." Which I thought was, that seems like a sensible question, because if you sign a letter, you just have to sign the letter. You can't say, oh, but I didn't see this, but I didn't see that. You're like, okay,
Right.
overall,
Right.
I agree with the message of this letter. So yeah, so that's how it came to be. Yeah, yeah, that was it. And it you know, I was I got to be honest, I wrote that article hoping to have an influence on the actual U.S. government policy. I thought, I said that letter. Sorry, I wrote that article. Nobody really reads the New York Times. Like it's not a common thing that people like go out of their way to read. Um, but it is very influential in governments, and especially in a democratic
Right.
administration. It had
Right.
no effect at all. It didn't affect anything. You know,
Right.
the Sunday after that article came out is when Blinken and Austin sent Blinken and Austin sent Dermer and Gallant, who was the defense minister at the time. They sent him a letter outlining several, I think it was 15 steps that the Israelis had to take, otherwise they would forfeit American weapons. Of course, they didn't take any of them,
Right.
and no American weapons were forfeited. But like it literally had no effect whatsoever. Dozens of American. That I was pretty surprised by that. I have to be honest. I thought it would actually have some influence, and I have talked to people at the State Department and elsewhere who have said that, like, no, all of this. First of all, they already knew all of this. That they didn't need to hear it from you. I was trying to make it public, but but they all. It's interesting. All of them have said that when they're in meetings with Blinken and Brett McGurk and Austin and Biden at the time, when they would bring up stuff like this Times article or the Politico article that I wrote, or and plenty of other stuff. It's not just I'm hardly the only person writing about this. No one in the room would say, like Brett McGurk wouldn't say, no, that's a lying Hamas guy. What are you talking? Like, okay, yeah, they're shooting kids in the head. What do you want?
It's just extraordinary. So we read through some of the sort of physical, findings, but you also reference in the report the psychological toll that this has had,
Yeah.
particularly on children. And I remember watching, I believe, in your UN speech and in a subsequent interview with the BBC, you mentioned a statistic that about half of Gaza's children are suicidal, and that a vast majority of them don't expect to live past childhood.
Yeah.
You have volunteered in other disaster zones, Ukraine and Haiti. Have you ever seen that dynamic anywhere else where
No,
children
that
did not
was
want to live?
yeah, no, that was something that struck everyone as being absolutely shocking. It was very, very common to hear a child say, and I'm not talking about 17-year-old boys. Like, yeah, like teenagers get suicidal. Nobody denies that. That's unfortunately a normal part of childhood sometimes. But but this is I'm talking about preteen children, like 12 and under. It is extremely unusual outside of the setting of extreme psychiatric disease to find a child who even considers the possibility of their own death,
Right.
let alone
Right.
is actually
Right.
suicidal. And yeah, no, I still, there was this little, I wish I could remember this kid's name. His last name was Abu Rus, but I can't remember his first name. He was a 5 or 6 year old boy. His right arm had been shattered and he had an external fixator on it. His left arm had been shattered. He had an external fixator on it. Both of his legs had been amputated. And he's in miserable pain all the time. There was no morphine in the hospital that we could give him. He can't eat because there wasn't a lot of food available. Now his two parents actually happened to have survived the bombing of that killed him and all of his, or that injured him and killed all of his siblings. And every time we would go in, because you change dressings and stuff, and kids get scared and they're screaming, and that's normal, of course. But he would scream, "Why am I the one that has to be alive? Why couldn't I have died?" This is all in Arabic. I couldn't understand it. People would translate for him. But why couldn't I have died with Sarah and Imad and like my I'm just making up their names, but like with my brothers and sisters? That's totally abnormal. And that's just, I had somebody the other day say, "Oh, that's because they've all been indoctrinated by Hamas." I was like, "Yeah, 5-year-olds have been indoctrinated by Hamas." That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. This is, it's just outrageous nonsense. But no, they've been indoctrinated by bombs falling on them constantly. And if you think of a 5-year-old child, like think about what conscious memories, like a kid who's 5 years old today in Gaza, what conscious memories does he have that don't involve fear, pain, hunger, terror, seeing his parents terrified and unable to protect him, displacement, thirst, being dirty, They literally have known nothing else the entire time, that they have any conscious memory of the world. I think I actually said it at the UN. It's not surprising to me that 49% of Gaza's children were suicidal, according to the War Child Alliance. It's surprising to me that they're not all suicidal.
Right.
And I think the War Child Alliance reported 96%, if I'm remembering the number correctly, expect to die in this war.
Yeah.
That's outrageous. I've never seen that anywhere else. And furthermore, neither has anybody else. No one has ever described this phenomenon in any other war zone. Precisely because this really isn't a war zone. That may be worth pointing out. There is... No, go ahead. No, I was going to say there is a war going on. Hamas is trying to fight a war against the Israeli troops that are coming in, and the Israeli troops are doing everything they can to avoid any contact with Palestinian militants and just bomb the living hell out of the entire place and just destroy whatever they can.
Come see us on tour in Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.